I recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The budget that we heard yesterday fails, Mr. Speaker, where perhaps it's most important. It fails our children and the education that they deserve. The Saskatchewan Teachers Federation President Colin Keys said, quote, "The budget was much ado about nothing," end quote. Mr. Speaker, teachers know the reality in the classroom. They know what their students need, and they know what the Sask Party government should be providing if we're serious about providing the best possible education for our kids. My question to the Premier, why has his budget failed to recognize the huge needs in our province's classrooms?
Hear, hear.
Recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The reality facing students, facing parents, facing educators, facing school boards in the province, Mr. Speaker, demands so much more than what we saw in yesterday's budget.
Hear, hear.
The Sask Party government has talked a big talk about reaching high educational standards, but their words, Mr. Speaker, are not backed up with dollars. The president of the Saskatchewan School Boards Association, Janet Ford, had this to say, quote, "The targets for which boards are accountable have been mandated by the government. This budget does not provide the resources required to achieve those targets." My question to the Premier, will he admit that his government has failed to provide school boards with the resources that they need to meet the targets that are actually set by the Ministry of Education?
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
Mr. Speaker, what we see in the province right now when it comes to pre-K to 12 education are classroom sizes that are too large. What we see, Mr. Speaker, are a reduction of educational assistance that makes learning more difficult for students. What we see right now, Mr. Speaker, are teachers and school boards doing their absolute best to meet the standards that they want to deliver because they love education, but Mr. Speaker, are struggling because of the resources that are not being provided by the Sask Party government. If we want to be all that we can be here in Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker, it means providing opportunity to every student, and it means improving educational outcomes for First Nations and Métis students, Mr. Speaker. And this budget does not do enough to improve and close the gap, the achievement gap for First Nations and Métis students. President of the SSBA had this to say about the resources provided on that front. This is simply unacceptable if the goal of eliminating the Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal student achievement gap is to be realized. My question to the Premier, why did he bring forward an education budget that fails to have the resources there so that every student in Saskatchewan can succeed?
Hear, hear.
I recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I remember in 2007 when this government was elected, and Mr. Speaker, it was about hope eating fear. And now we see from these members, Mr. Speaker, we see blaming other individuals, we see a stubborn refusal to accept responsibility, and we see a belittling of questions, Mr. Speaker, that are about the future of the province. Questions that are being brought forward by the President of the STF, questions that are being brought forward by the President of the School Boards Association, and we have the Premier just slough them off like it doesn't matter. That's not respectful, Mr. Speaker, to the educators in this province that are doing their best for our children. The parents that I speak with, Mr. Speaker, want the best possible education for their kids. They want better classrooms, they want more resources in those classrooms, they want the education that our children deserve. My question to the Premier, why is he refusing to listen to the concerns from teachers, from parents and students when it comes to the huge challenges that our classrooms are facing?